We're going to hear now from our other newly ordained priest. This young man is the first priest from the parish of Our Lady of Sorrows in Chandler to be ordained. His talk tonight is titled, "We're Called to be Saints." Please welcome Father John Grimm.
Before I was born, God knew me. Before I was conceived, God planned to make me a priest of Jesus Christ. The priesthood of Jesus Christ is amazing. It's an incredible gift, and I am constantly marveling at God's goodness for giving me this precious gift. Of course, I did not always know that God was planning to make me his priest. Like when he led the Israelites out of Egypt, God patiently and slowly revealed his plan to me. Today, I would like to share the story of how God revealed himself in my life. I will tell this story as a series of 4 little but significant lessons from God. And like so many students before me, I am constantly needing to relearn these lessons. My hope in sharing this story of mine is that God will use me to speak to your heart, and that in some small way, my story will benefit you in your own journey with our Lord. The first and most important lesson God taught me was that we are all called to be saints. I was raised Catholic by cradle Catholic parents. From the earliest age, my parents taught me about the faith, how to pray, and about the lives of the saints. Every young boy loves stories of heroes, and I was no different. I loved to hear stories of heroic people and be inspired by their courage and incredible gifts. For me, my favorite heroes were the saints. I particularly loved the story of St. Francis, who went from being the life of the party to a life of radical poverty. One night, when I was still young enough to be tucked in bed, I will never forget this, I asked my mother, "Mom, I want to be a saint when I grow up." And I'll never forget her response. You know what she said to me? She said, "Well, we're all called to be saints. A saint is someone who is with God in heaven. And it's difficult, but we're all called to be saints." Did you know it brought me such childlike delight to hear that. My mom not only supported my desire to be like my heroes and affirmed that it was possible, she affirmed that God was calling me to become a saint. Did you know this? I have since learned that this truth is basic catechetical teaching. We are all called to holiness. We're all called to be saints. So the first significant lesson I learned in my journey with God was that we are all called to be saints. The second lesson I learned builds directly on the first. There are many kinds of saints, and they're each unique. As I pondered the exciting reality that I could grow up to be a saint, I encountered the Lord in a new way. God placed a desire in my heart and used that desire to subtly guide me. In my elementary school years, I would remember my goal to become a saint, and I would be struck by a kind of problem. There are missionary martyr saints. There are priest saints. There were saints who were married. There are many different kinds of saints, so a natural question arose in my mind. If there are so many different kinds of saints, what kind of saint is God calling me to be? This question, inspired by God, has been a guiding force in my life, even to this day, because God calls me to holiness each day, just as he calls each of you to holiness every day. Throughout elementary school and into middle school, I would ponder this question, granted in a somewhat childish and abstract way, looking to some future glory and not concretely in the present moment. At this point in my life, God had taught me two important lessons. We are all called to be saints, and each saint is unique. There are many different kinds of saints. I don't know how many of you have tried this whole growing in holiness thing, but those who strive for holiness knows this third lesson really well. The third lesson is difficult, and I say is difficult because in many ways I am still learning it. The third lesson is I am weak, and life is challenging without God. During high school, it often seemed like following God was impossible. The truth is, it is impossible to follow God, at least without God's grace. And as a high schooler, I often tried to do it by my own willpower. The Lord invited me to a deeper encounter with him through numerous retreats, through the Our Lady of Guadalupe summer camp, and particularly through vocation discernment retreats. At one discernment retreat, as I knelt before the Blessed Sacrament, I experienced a gift of profound peace and joy. It was through this experience that I began to realize God was calling me to the priesthood. Since then, I have come to realize that all the joy and all the good things we do in life cannot happen by brute force or sheer willpower. Rather, it is a gift from God. God continues to teach me this third lesson. I am weak, and life is challenging without him. There are many lessons God gives us, and I learned many such lessons in the twists and turns of my vocation journey. But I will limit myself to 4 lessons. So the fourth lesson, the final lesson that had a significant role in my discernment of the priesthood is the necessity to trust in the wisdom of the church. This is a lesson I learned from Archbishop Coakley. One of the first steps in becoming a seminarian, becoming a priest, is to have an interview with the Archbishop. When I met the Archbishop over 7 years ago, I was nervous and still uncertain if God was calling me to be a priest. Like the philosopher Descartes, I wanted absolute certainty. So, in my interview, I asked him for advice. His response profoundly impacted me. He said, "You do not have to discern this alone. The church prays and discerns with and for you." Through these words, Archbishop Coakley delivered me from a spirit of anxiety and set me free to follow God with confidence in the wisdom of Holy Mother Church, who nurtures and guides me every day of my life. This fourth and final lesson, to trust in the wisdom of the church, has been a source of peace and joy these past 7+ years. My journey is not over. The Lord continues to teach me about his love every day, especially in the ministry of the priesthood. But I can honestly say that I would not be here today without the gift of these little but significant lessons. I want to thank Archbishop Coakley for ordaining me a priest of Jesus Christ. Archbishop, through you, God has given me the most precious gift of all. I want to thank the countless people who have supported me with their prayers and generosity. I owe you my life, which I daily lay down before the altar of God. And finally, I want to thank my parents who taught me to pray, and especially my mother, who taught me that we are all called to be saints. Thank you.